there, tryhards and trusties. Welcome to Basically Misled.
I'm Dagny.
And I'm Day.
We give advice. 50% is life-changing, 50% will leave you crying in a stairwell by the end of the day. You decide which is which.
Come procrastinate with us while we chatter endlessly about things you could probably just Google.
Today we are welcoming our special guest, Laurel. You don't know Laurel.
Not at all.
So who is Laurel?
Yeah.
Laurel, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Laurel. I am a student at the Evergreen State College,
Yes.
Yeah.
just like these two.
A good way to describe Laurel is the shirt she's wearing right now, which we bought her, by the way, because we're awesome.
And I
Yep.
literally think I've said this before, like before you got me this shirt. But just so everyone knows, it's got a picture of a cup and it says, half air, half water. Technically, the glass is always full. That's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
That accurately describes me.
Yes. So what class are you currently taking right now,
I'm
Laurel?
taking Integrated Natural Sciences. It's a lot of work, but it's really interesting.
Yeah. Are you on like a science path right now, would you say, or are you just trying things out?
Well, I guess if I'm taking INS, I'm on a science path. Yeah. I'm just really interested in, like, the human body and how the world works, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. Like encompassing all sciences.
I guess. Well,
Nothing-
geology is very interesting.
Hmm.
I thought it was going to be boring, but it's actually really cool because it makes a little bit of sense, but it also makes a lot of no sense, you know?
I remember learning geology in high school, and it was just my professor made a bunch of rock puns. Like the types of rock, you know? I don't even know what they would... Actually, I think it's written... I have like a shirt that everyone signed in high school, and there's a rock pun on it, and I wish I could remember what it was, but I can't.
Did you take it for granite? That's the only rock pun my teacher makes. He's like, geology is a very serious science. But he's really funny, so it's funny.
So do you want to talk about how you came to Evergreen? How have you been doing, Laurel?
Good. I'm a stressed out college student, so that's that.
That is exactly how I feel. Shocking.
Me too.
But here I am, taking a study break with my friends.
Yeah. You know, that's been me the past 2 days. Haven't been studying.
I know, I keep procrastinating all of my work, and then I save it all for Monday, and then Monday I'm like, oh, I just want to go to bed, but I can't.
Yeah. I feel like I want to save it all for Monday, and then I realize I have class.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Well, I don't have class Mondays, so.
One of the most accurate things that I've ever heard was, and I don't actually know if this is true, but it feels really true, is that apparently when you're thinking about your future self, like doing homework or something, the same part of your brain activates as when you're thinking about other people. So when you think, I'm going to do my homework later, it's you're thinking of your future self as like a different person, and that's why you're fine to just dump all the work on this future self, because it doesn't really feel like you. And I feel like that's totally me, because I'm like, I don't want to do my homework now. Future Dagny can do that. And it does just feel like a totally different person that I have no problem like shoving all of this like responsibility on.
Wow, you know what? That makes so much sense. I feel like I'm always like, oh, I'll just do it later, and then I picture myself being all motivated. But then if I'm like, I need to do my homework in an hour, then I just really don't want to do it.
Yes, I do definitely have a picture of my future self being really motivated and just like on top of it. Like I've got all the books spread out. Like I'm just, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on this podcast, we're talking about labels. So, do you want to start with some personal labels that everyone feels like they identify with? I can go first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can
you
do
go
it
first.
Okay, So, well, there's like several, I guess. One that I've been thinking about recently is like introvert. And to a lesser extent, I do like my Myers-Briggs type INTJ. So I do a little bit with that. Gay, I guess, and weirdly more recently lesbian. I feel like I'm more attached to the label lesbian now than I was 9 months ago. I blame actual Reddit lesbians of Reddit. I don't know if that was correct. But
You blame
anyway.
The lesbians of Reddit.
The lesbians of Reddit. That's who I blame.
Yeah.
And also asexual. That's pretty big for me. New label I currently have, single. So that's nice. I don't know. I guess I do kind of like student. I know that's kind of broad, but I do feel like there is certain things that I think of myself as when I think of the fact that I'm a student at a college as opposed to if I wasn't. I think there's like something to that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's all I got right now.
Okay. Yeah. I should have thought about this more in preparation for this podcast, but I think my main one actually is student. Because it's like what I have been for how many years now,
Mm-hmm.
and I still heavily identify with it. That and introvert, really, but I think lately also, I don't know, work has really encompassed my mind a lot. And so like hard worker is one that I might identify with, which is weird to acknowledge I'm a hard worker, but
You are though, Day.
yeah. And I don't know if there's any more that I really, I guess friend. Got that label.
Oh, I forgot one for me. Artist. I do
Ooh, yeah.
really identify with being an artist, even though it's not like a professional thing, really. I don't know. I do it enough in my free time and the way I approach other things in life that I think that
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a last one would be perfectionist.
Do you identify with that?
Yeah. Lately, especially.
Like in a good way? Like you're happy that you're this?
Yes and no. I like qualities about being a perfectionist, but also not as much, because it's not always the great parts of it.
Sometimes I think of labels as like a way that you use to explain your behavior. Like, this makes sense because I'm a perfectionist. And that's kind of how I see you use that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's kind of relieving sometimes.
Right. Because I'm like, oh, that's why I'm doing this. Makes sense. But,
I think for me, labels are like, well, actually there's like two types of labels. One that I like actually identify with, where it's like, I'm a sister. Like, that's something I definitely identify with, and I think of myself as a sister to more than just my actual siblings. But, like, I feel like that's just like a title for something I already am. It's not that I identify with that label, it's just like something I identify as that, like, people like to put a label on, you know? And then my other thing about labels, or like the other category, would be like things I want to identify as, or things I want other people to see me as. So, oh shoot, I had an idea when you were talking, but I can't remember what it was. Come back to me. But I think like there's the two categories. Like, things I actually am that words can go onto, and then things I think about and, like, am I this? Am I, like, identifying this way for other people to give me a label? Like, am I giving myself this label for other people to see me this way? Or is this actually something I think of myself as?
That's interesting, because I feel like I obviously am a sister. I have 2 brothers. But I don't really identify with the word sister. Like, you seem to really, and so that's interesting. Because, like, yes, I am a sister, but I don't think of myself as a sister, if that makes sense.
Right. Like, that's not a label I would put up on the high list of things that I am.
Well, I mean, I like friend, but I feel like sister is like a specific type of friend, which
Yeah. Do you have any labels, like, about your behavior, maybe, like, in social situations? Because I feel like we like introvert or like perfectionist. Do you have labels that
I
you
think
use?
of myself. Well, okay, see, these are more the labels that I'm like other people impose on me. Like an extrovert. I am like extroverted with like in the definition of extrovert, but it's not a word that I like, oh yeah, I'm an extrovert. You know? But I am extroverted.
Like, what? Awkward? Do you ever say that about, like, I think a lot of people...
Do you think I'm awkward?
No, I feel like I've heard you say that, though, sometimes.
I think that's just, like, a thing that people say, like, oh, I'm awkward, or I made it awkward.
But I feel like some people use it to the point of it's a label that they sort of use about themselves as a way that they are and a way that they bring to a social situation.
I think our friend is like that.
We have a friend like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to, even if I was very awkward, I wouldn't want to identify with the word awkward, because then that kind of like makes, when I identify with a word or a label, I think it makes me feel like I need to continue to identify with that. So if I identified as awkward and I was awkward, I feel like I would feel like I need to continue being awkward to like live up to that label. You know what I mean?
Right. Or other behavior that maybe would be interpreted some other way now falls under the category of awkward because that's who you are, and so your behavior must fall under that category, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Do you think labels can change with time? Or they're like a set thing that you feel like you have to always be?
I think they should be able to change with time, but they don't always necessarily, because we put this word on it, and then we think, well, everyone sees me as that, so I have to live up to it. Whereas if like we didn't have labels, or we had like these arbitrary labels where it's like, oh yeah, I'm a sister because I just am, we would be able to change more. You know what I mean? Or we'd like, at least I would. I guess we is too broad. But I personally, I like have labels that like other people put on me, and I guess some that I put on myself, and then I feel like I can't change because I already have this identity, like this social or public identity that I have to live up to. Or like continue, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm getting a sense that personally you aren't as big of a fan as labels. Like, you don't really like using them. Because, like, I personally am a huge fan of labels, just, like, for myself, not necessarily for other people, but I, like, really like them. But what would you, like, what is your overall opinion about, like, using them for yourself? Do you feel like it's overall, like, more good or more bad, or just, like...
I think that's a really common thing, is to identify with labels, like, especially at Evergreen, because, like, there's all these social groups, and they're like, I identify as these things, and then you can, like, create bonds with other people like that. Like, I identify as a queer person, and then you are suddenly friends with a bunch of people who identify as a queer person, you know what I mean? And I think that I have, like, never had problems making friends or, like, being sociable with people. Like, people don't really dislike me, and I think it's because I try to avoid the label thing, so I have a very general personality that lots of people can identify with, or that I can identify with lots of people, because I don't put those labels on myself. You know what I mean? Like, if I said, well, I am a cis person, and then I, like, where am I going with this? If I, like, said, I am a cis woman, and then I suddenly identify with all these other people who are cis women, and then it kind of crowds out the people who don't identify that way. Or, like, I can't relate to the people who don't identify that way as much, and so it makes, like, my relationships with people who aren't cis women, like, not as strong. You know what I mean? Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. What do you feel like, Day? What is your opinion on, like, using labels for yourself? More pro, con, in the middle?
I feel like I'm a little neutral about it, because I definitely give myself labels, and as we were saying earlier, it's a way for me to kind of be like, oh, that explains my behavior. But I never have, like, sought out different, like, labels to describe myself. It's more, I think, what other people have said or what I've just, like, read about and then been like, oh, yeah, that's me. Yeah, because I've never been like, oh, my gosh, I must identify in this group of people or, like, be able to be relatable to these people. I think I just tend to find myself drifting towards certain types of people, like introverts. But, yeah, I don't think I have, like, any specific want to use labels for myself or to not use labels for myself.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do kind of seek labels out, and when I find things that I seem to identify a little bit with, like, I do more research into them to see if it really fits, and then sort of, like, collect them, I guess, as, like, a way to, I don't, like, explain how I am or something. I was thinking about it this morning, and I think part of the draw of labels to me is that if I am, like, seem to be in a place where I seem different than other people, then I think it's helpful for me to have a label that explains that difference and that allows me to realize that there is other people that are like me, even if they're not the people that I'm seeing right now. And so I am part of a group, even if it doesn't feel like the group I'm currently in, you know? And I think that's why, like, one of the strongest, like, identifying labels I have is, like, gay, not because I'm, like, that, like, controls my life somehow, because it really doesn't, but because, like, in high school and stuff, you know, I was with a bunch of people who, like, weren't at all and basically expected me to be straight and asked me questions about me being straight, and I was kind of like, what? I didn't really know, like, I didn't know how to relate to that, but I think having a label that separates me from that, who they were expecting me to be, like, helps me interpret that experience more, I guess. So that might help. And, like, with the introvert thing too, if people, like, really want me to, like, go out and have fun, like, with a bunch of other people around constantly, it helps me to interpret that experience as, like, yes, that's fun for them, but I'm not like that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's a way for me to, like, protect myself against feeling different and just, like, acknowledging that I'm different maybe in this specific way, but it's something that other people are also like. And, like, I'm probably like these other people in different ways, but maybe not this specific one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just came up with that. Maybe in 2 days I'll be like, that's completely not true at all.
Yeah.
That's
I like that, though.
though.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I hear, like, you don't tend to have stories about feeling like you were, like, not part of the group. Maybe just because you are just so friendly and everyone likes you, so you don't have that feeling. So maybe it's just less useful for you to use a label like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and I didn't, like, seek out people, nor did I feel different from other people. I just kind of didn't want to be friends with everyone.
Yeah.
I kind of was like, okay, like, I want to be friends with these people, but, like, not those people, because I'm just not interested in acting that way right now, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to hang out with them because they're different from me in these ways, or, oh, that's why they're different for me. Makes sense with you, though.
Yeah. It's hopeful for me somehow to distinguish myself from my assumptions about what the masses are like, which I don't know if that is like a helpful attitude, but it's definitely something I do.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way to go through life, protecting yourself.
I mean, it makes, yeah.
It's just a complete protection having all these words.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way it is, because if somebody has a problem with the way that I'm like, and I have a word to describe it, and that word has been used in a sense that, like, people are building themselves up around this word, like it's a good thing, then I do feel more protected.
Yeah, I feel like I get wanting to have labels. Like, a lot of times I'll go on Pinterest because I love Pinterest, and I just read all these, like, Tumblr posts that are posted on Pinterest, because I don't have a Tumblr.
And you get one.
I've tried before, and it wouldn't let me. Of course, that was a long time ago. Anyways, what was I gonna say?
Pinterest, Tumblr.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you have a community outside of, wait, that's not what I meant to say. Ah, shucks. You gotta edit
feel like
this part
there's
out.
a group of people that you can identify with outside of your...
Yeah, it's validating.
Yes.
Having a label is validating, yeah. Or, like, giving yeah. And then that's why people, like, find groups of people who identify with that same label, and I think it can be really, like, useful and, like, good for people to find that kind of community, and I think it can also be detrimental to people who don't identify in that community, because, you know, there's, like, people who identify as, like, Black Lives Matter. It's such a good example. Black Lives Matter popped up, and, like, occurred.
Yes.
And then people were like, oh, but what about everyone else? They have their community, we need to build our community, and then you build your community against the other community, and I think that's how it can be detrimental, is when you create labels, like, against or in opposition to other people's labels. Like, if you just identify as one thing, and, like, that's fine, then that's fine, but if you identify as something, and then someone else is like, oh, well, I also need to identify as something, but not the same as you, because that's not how I actually am. You know, my identity is because of your identity, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, you're saying that sometimes when people are creating, like, a close group, then other people who feel like they're excluded from the group can feel the need to make an opposing group.
Yeah.
And that's when things go wrong, because we don't really need opposing groups.
Yeah.
But that's difficult, because I think there is a need for, like, different types of minorities to feel like they have an in-group.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's very difficult, because, like, then if other people feel like they also need an in-group to somehow counter that, then, like, that's not a good situation.
Yeah.
But I think there is a need for, like, minorities to feel like they have their own, like, even, like, me, like, I know someone, and, like, just, like, if I don't really know, if I'm talking about, like, being gay, like, I don't think I don't actually know. I don't think that I do it in a sense usually of, like, that I'm in this inclusive club that other people aren't invited to. But this person kind of feels that way sometimes, and I don't really know what to do about that, because I think I do tend to take extra steps to maybe distinguish my experience from a person who is straight sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's, like, to make me feel more comfortable or something. It's not intended to be isolating, but this person does see it as, like, somewhat isolating sometimes, about, like, just that I'm saying that I'm, like, different from them and they're not included in my special group of gayness. And I'm sort of like, I'm really sorry about that, and it's not my intention, but I don't really know what to do to fix that.
Yeah.
Exactly, because my experience, at least right now, is not really the same as, like, maybe a traditional, like, straight heteronormative. I don't really know what to call it, but, like, what is the word? I'm thinking of, like, timeline. That's not the right word. Path in life. I don't know.
And maybe it's like a thing where people just really need to relate to other people. And so when they can't relate to someone, I feel like maybe at Evergreen there's, like, a thing where everyone has, like, this need. I shouldn't say everyone. A lot of people. It's a thing at Evergreen that I see, that people need to be unique and they want to be interesting and individual. And then they find these groups of other people who are, like, also want to be unique and interesting. And then I shouldn't talk about this. I don't quite know what I'm talking about.
I think maybe this is along the lines, but there's a lot of minorities at Evergreen, given whatever type of minority it is, and they might not have felt included in very many groups growing up.
Yeah.
But now they come to Evergreen and they, like, feel like they have these labels. They can identify with other people who have similar labels. And so they want to, like, they feel like a group connection because of their labels. And so it's, like, really helpful for them. But it can be excluding to other people who don't have the same type of labels. I think labels are a way for people to identify with themselves
and with other people.
Yeah. There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is kind of what you were talking about in the beginning, which is when labels are basically boxing you in more than they're allowing you to be yourself. Because I feel like there's some labels that I definitely feel like allow me to be myself more and don't box me in. Like, I think, like, I can imagine how somebody would be like, oh, the label asexual is, like, it is boxing you in, because what happens if you, like, feel sexual attraction? Like, then what are you gonna do? Like, you've boxed yourself into this experience. But to me, it doesn't feel like that, because I feel like I would be very open to that experience, because that's what the quote regular experience it is. I feel very open to that. What I don't feel open to is that not happening, and so I feel like that's what I need the label for, is to, like, open that up, if that makes sense. Did that make sense? Like, I need to feel open to experiencing what I am experiencing, which is not.
I see.
Okay.
But I don't feel like it's boxing me in, because I feel like the rest of it I am open to. Maybe that didn't make sense.
But okay, so what if you one day did feel sexual attraction? What would you think? Would you be like, oh, am I not asexual anymore? Do I have to, like, get rid of this label? Or can I still identify with this? Like, what exactly would you think?
Well, I guess because I do have a fairly confident idea that it's a spectrum, and so I would still feel confident to be under the spectrum. If I felt like something was maybe pushing me out of under the spectrum and onto a different spectrum, maybe that would cause some, like, emotions. But I think I would be really fine with it. And even, like, I don't know, even, like, lesbian, because then I'm sort of thinking to myself, like, or is it really just binary? Like, what sort of, what genders would you date? And I'm kind of like, well, probably a lot. Like, I'm not super, and so, like, that doesn't really bother me either, because I'm like, that's, like, whatever. But anyway, but I think some labels kind of box us in. Like, I feel like I do feel like a bad student, actually. And I think that is a label that, like, sort of hurts me, that's really hard to get rid of.
A bad student?
Yeah, that I'm a bad student. Because even when I do work, I feel like I'm not doing enough. And so I feel like that's a label that just sort of follows me, that when it's not matching with my behavior, I'll still default on the label instead of what I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
So if I'm actually doing a good job and, like, keeping up with, like, my readings and my homework, I'll still default to the label of, like, oh, but I'm a bad student, so it doesn't really matter. And so I think there's some things like that. Do you feel like you have labels like that, Day, that you just, like, hold on to, even though, like, it doesn't really match, but you're like, oh, but I'm like this, so it doesn't matter what's going on?
I'm trying to think. Because I don't perceive myself as a bad student.
It's because you're not a bad student.
But I feel like that also, and this I think is a label that a lot of people have given me, where that, like, I'm a good student. And so I feel bad when I'm behind on readings, or I, like, do a paper last minute, especially since, like, I have the same teacher for so long now, that she knows the work I can do. So I feel like if I don't do it well enough, then she might be disappointed.
Oh.
And I mean, that hasn't seemed to happen yet, but there's, like, 7 more months. And then I think also, like, I strongly identify, or used to identify, as a reader. And because I would read so much, and everybody that knows me from that period of my life still kind of perceives me as a reader. So when I, like, go home or I'm talking to people and they're kind of like, oh, like, have you been reading anything good lately? I'm kind of like, no, I haven't been reading at all for the past, like, 3 years. And that makes me feel bad, because I feel like I need to live up to that person of being, like, a reader who reads more than 100 books in 3 months, or, like, things like
that's a
that.
lot of books.
That was in the summer. But
100. You're a fast reader, I guess.
yeah, I read 150 one year. I know. But
It took me like a whole year to read one book. It was very thick.
I read a lot, but I don't read books, so I don't think I have any labels or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I spend a lot of time reading.
Right.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, so I feel like I'm disappointing the masses by not reading, when I've kind of told myself it's okay because I have to read so much for school. And I don't count those books as what I'm really reading, because it's for class. But I'm like, okay, when I graduate, I will read again.
Yeah.
And I hope that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Do you think, like, the student thing, like, people impose on you that you're a good student, do you think that makes you, like, it pushes you to be a good student, or do you think it's more detrimental?
I think it's both. Because it pushes me to do well in school. And, I mean, I'm very serious about school, so it, like, pushes me to continue being serious. But at the same time, I worry a lot about if I'm doing enough, or if I'm living up to those people's expectations of how good I'm doing. Or, like, when I don't do an assignment. Like, I accidentally forgot to do one quiz online, like, last week, and I was, like, freaking out about it, because I was like, oh no, my teacher's gonna be, like, so disappointed in me, and I'm gonna, like, have to explain to her why I didn't do it. And then I kind of was like, no, it's fine. It was, like, one assignment. That's okay. Your grade is still fine.
I think I'm now thinking of my experience with the label artist, and I think there's kind of a case to be made for keeping labels vague, which sounds, I feel like, contradictory. Like, yes, I have this really specific word that I'm using, but it's so vague, it could mean anything. But I think that I didn't really like using the word artist, because I'm like, oh, I don't have anything, like,
Yeah.
like, I'm not a certain way. I don't know what that way is, but it's a lot of ways that I'm not a certain way as an artist. But then I just decided that didn't really matter, and I just, whatever I was doing was an artist because I just decided it was. You know, like, I just, like, doodle, and I have a sketchbook, and I, like, do artsy things, so, like, I'm an artist.
I think I've always wanted to identify with the label artist or dancer or musician, and I've danced and played music my entire life, and I dance and I listen to music, like, every day. You guys have seen me, I just, like, impulsively floss. But I've never identified with those labels, especially dancer, because I feel like I've never been, like, a good enough dancer to identify with that label. Like, there's always someone better than me, and I feel like that's been detrimental to me, because if I could just, like, not care about wanting to be a dancer, then maybe I wouldn't, like, feel self-conscious and I'd be a better dancer, you know? I also think the keeping your labels vague kind of goes with what you were saying about, like, it being a spectrum. Like, being asexual can be a spectrum, and I think that's also how labels can be a little detrimental, is because labels are often, like, one word or, like one phrase, and one word, like artist, it's just one word. It makes you think, like, all artists are this one way, but, like, art is so many different mediums and, like, so many levels, and, like, you know, everything's different, but when you just put one word on it, it gives a certain expectation. So, like the gender binary, like, man or woman, like, what if I'm there's one side of the spectrum and one other side of the spectrum, but then, like, if I'm somewhere in between, am I non-binary? Because, like, even the word woman means so many different things to so many different people that I find it honestly hard to identify with that label, because it has a set expectation that it is a binary. But I don't think that even, like, the gender binary is a binary. You know what I mean? And I don't think people honestly think that way, but we have put these words on it already that like, we think people think that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, I would totally call you a dancer. Like, I don't think there's, like, any qualifications that I have to be called, like, a dancer. Like, you are meeting them 100%.
Thanks. Huh.
Or even, like, a music person. I feel like I would know what word to use, but instead it's just music person in my mind.
I can identify with music person.
You're a music person. That's a label you can use. Yeah. But you listen to music. You play music. You understand music. Like, those, I feel like, are the qualifications. I guess I don't... So maybe partially the reason I like labels is because I take them and then I make them how I am, and then I'm like, yep, now I'm going to use it. So, I don't know, it just seems...
No, I get it, I think.
Do you have any labels that have been given to you that you feel like don't match you as a person?
See, I think about gender a lot, like, female, which is sex, but, like, it goes with gender a little. And I kind of think about how that label, like, being a girl, has affected me throughout my life. Like, if other people didn't call me that, would I still identify with it? Do I identify with it just because people call me that? Do I even identify with it in reality, or do I just, like, accept it? Like, I was telling you about this day, not the other day, quite a while ago, but, like, I think about, like, people don't think of me, people throughout my life don't think of me as a woman. Like, they think of me as a girl and, like, female, but I've never been called a woman, except by, like, a select few friends where they're like, you're a woman, blah, 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 or whatever. But, like, I feel like I feel like those parts don't count. But, like people in my family, I don't think my family thinks of me that way. And I wonder, and I don't think of me that way either. And I wonder, like, if I keep thinking, like, telling myself I'm a woman, like, can I numb myself into it, into, like, believing it? Like, are we just numbed into, like, believing we're women? You know what I mean? This isn't, I don't know what I'm saying.
I mean, I do, but honestly, like, that sounds like a terrible idea.
I know, but see, do I not identify as a woman because people don't think of me that way? Do people kind of inherently see me as something I already identify as, which is not specifically a woman? You know what I mean? And it's hard to tell because because labels are all for other people. Like, I don't feel like I need to give myself a label, like I'm a woman, or I'm not a woman, or whatever. Like, I don't feel like I need to give myself that label because I don't feel like I need to define myself for other people, which is what labels are for, really, is, like, for other people to see you as. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a certain, like, I think it takes a certain, like, mental flexibility, I think, to not label people in the way that you're used to labeling them,
mm-hmm.
and to keep it, like, kind of question mark. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we've talked about this before, that, like, if you don't know someone's gender, like, just use they, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what that is that's holding back from the label that you're used to applying, and just, like, put a question mark there and be fine.
Yeah.
Fine with the question mark. And I think that there's probably a lot of areas in life that you could do that, but it's not what we're used to doing, so it's very uncomfortable to just leave things as a question mark, because I'm like, I need the details of this person that I'm used to, like, getting right away.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, not with the gender thing, but only because I think that I've trained myself that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think it's, like, like, it doesn't feel like a smooth process to deprive yourself of labels that you're used to having, that I think give people comfort that they know what's going on in their environment.
It's such a human thing to, like, want to know, to, like, impose these labels, even if they're not correct, just so that we have a sense of knowledge about someone else. Like, using he or she pronouns instead of they, even if someone uses they, them pronouns, because using she or he, like, gives us something we already know. But using they could mean, like, literally anything else, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of, I think I also want to do that with age, that if I don't know someone's age in my class, sometimes I feel like I'm not sure how to talk to them. I think there's a comfort level I have talking with people that have, like, just went from high school to college, or at least, like, very close, and I feel like somewhat comforted by that fact. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because they're, like, just like me, so it's, you know. But, and so when I feel like I'm not really sure of someone's age, I'm not sure how to talk to them sometimes, which I don't need to know a person's age, but it's something that I should probably become more comfortable with. Like, the age is question mark. Just continue on.
I think I'm the other way around. Like, if I don't know someone's age, I can just talk to them as a normal human. But if I find out that they're, like, significantly younger than me, I get a little uncomfortable. I'm like, what kind of experiences have you had? Like, I don't know how to talk to you now. You know, but if I don't know their age, then, like, it's just another person I'm talking to.
Yeah, I feel like with me, it's if people are, like, significantly older, then I start worrying about that they're thinking exactly what you thought about me.
Oh,
but
yeah.
But they already know, because maybe I, like, look younger, and so they were, like, aware that they were older the whole time.
Yeah.
I've never thought about this.
I actually think about it a lot.
No. This is interesting.
Like, if there's someone I'm attracted to, and then I find out that they're younger than me, and then I feel really, really weird about it.
I do think about age in that way. Where, like, if I see someone attractive, and I'm kind of like... I feel like with my age, I'm still, like, somebody could be a baby, like 18, you know?
A baby? An 18-year-old baby?
Yeah, like an 18-year-old baby.
Man-child.
And I might be like, oh, they're attractive. Because it's still, like, in the age range that I find attractive. So I worry about that. Especially, like, when I'm at work and someone who's probably a freshman comes in. And I'm like, okay, but no day. But in all, like, just talking to people, I don't really need their age to really converse with them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, I still talk to people.
I know, but like, I'm not worried about anything.
Hi, I'm Dagny. I'm 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the whole question mark thing. But then I think it's almost like I think it's probably on a scale, which is like, I think that if I'm like using they for someone, it maybe the reason that it's more comfortable for me is because I feel like you're loosely part of a group that I'm also loosely part of. It's a different part of the group, but we're still loosely part of the same group. And so maybe to me, what I think is like, oh, now I'm okay with a question mark, it's information I don't know. Maybe that's not true. Maybe it's that I do know information. I don't know specific information, but that's not necessary to know that you are loosely part of a group of that I'm also part of. And so then maybe I will feel more comfortable because of that.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's not the same for other people. I feel like sounds like I'm like advocating for like not using they, but definitely use they if you don't know someone's gender.
I think, honestly, what makes, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but what I think about when I'm interacting with people, like, when people, especially at Evergreen, people will use they, them pronouns even more than necessary sometimes. Like, I'll introduce myself, I use she, her pronouns, but people will still refer to me as they, and I'm not sure if it's because they can't remember that I use she, her pronouns, or I don't know, like, what their logic is, but I feel weird when people use they, them pronouns for me, because I feel like that's validating that thing that, like, people don't think of me as a woman, and so, I don't know. It's not, like, important that I'm cis. It's important that people think of me as a woman, you know? But I also don't know if that's really important to me. I don't know. I'm in a very gray area right now.
I mean, if you have pronouns you like to use and people aren't using them.
Yeah, but I feel like, especially when I'm like a female and I'm using she, her pronouns, I feel like it's not as valid to correct someone. But then I feel like, I don't know.
I mean,
maybe don't include that part.
To you, then you should use the pronouns you want.
Yeah, that's true. I also wonder about people who say they use any pronouns. Like, maybe I am still learning about pronouns, but like, do you guys smell a candle burning?
No?
I smell a weird smell.
It smells like my aunt's house.
Maybe we'll investigate it.
Wait.
Okay, sorry.
I kind of smell something.
Okay, wait. Go into your point.
What was I saying?
I don't know.
You're talking about people that use all pronouns.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, people who use any pronouns, and I work with quite a few people who...
Sorry, I just interrupted you. I see smoke.
Oh, okay.
Outside.
It's outside.
Oh, smoke outside. What are we gonna do? Oh, no.
At least they're not smoking in their rooms. I know some people, I work with quite a few people who introduce themselves using any pronouns, and I wonder, like, are they saying, I don't care what other people call me, or how other people think of me, or, like, how do they identify it? Because I work with someone who say they use any pronouns, and then they were referring to themselves, and they said they. And so I'm wondering if they, like, they prefer, with air quotation marks, they, them pronouns, but, like, don't care that other people acknowledge that, or, Like, I'm curious why people say any pronouns, like why they don't have specific pronouns. But then I've also recently learned that pronouns aren't as related to gender as I thought they were, but I'm still... I don't quite know. I don't know. I'm learning still.
Yeah, something interesting that I heard that was a bit of like pronouns are technically just a label like any other.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can really use them how you want to, basically, as a label that is maybe tied to your gender in a way that other people don't have to understand for you to use them that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, they're just a label.
Yeah. And maybe
Yeah.
it's like more important to some people than others that people acknowledge that label, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because like misgendering, like using the wrong pronouns, some people are like very offended by that, and other people are like, oh, I'll just ignore it, it's fine. You know? So it probably, maybe it's like a degree of identifying with that label, or a degree of caring that other people see you as that label, maybe.
I have a boss who I didn't know this till like a few months ago, but she ends her emails with her pronouns, and she does she, her,
Mm-hmm.
they, them.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that she also identified with they, them pronouns, because everybody else at my work just uses she, her. And she, I don't think, has introduced herself to me with like,
they.
yeah, being like, hi, I also use they, them pronouns. So it's very interesting to me to have that, like, to see that.
It might be a comfortability thing, like,
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that I've known either from like last year or even freshman year, who introduced themselves, like, before they introduced themselves as like, I use she, her pronouns or he, him pronouns, and now they're saying like any pronouns or she or they pronouns, that kind of stuff. And I think it's like a comfortability with changing, like the thing we were talking about earlier about identifying with a label and feeling like you need to live up to it, or like having a label and feeling like you need to live up to it. Like, if I decided I think I kind of want to start going by they, them pronouns, I feel like I'd personally be really uncomfortable introducing myself in front of people or to people I already know who use she, her pronouns for me and know me that way, and as saying, I use they, them pronouns now. Like, it's probably a comfortability thing with adjusting to changing your label, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also getting used to it. You might use your own old pronoun that you identified with and the new one you might identify with to, like, see how you really feel.
Yeah. It's because it's all a social thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't use pronouns for ourselves. Like, if I was the only person in the world, would I be like, oh, she's blah, blah, blah? You know? I don't think I'd think like that.
I speak in the first person for myself. Or the third, where I say, Day, what are you doing?
I do that too.
What? So this first person is saying I, and then if you're using your name, that's third person. Or is it also third person if you're using pronouns, or is it some other person?
I think it's pronouns that are third person.
Wow, I use all three, because I also say, what are you doing to myself.
Oh, is that second person?
That's second person. Third person does, that's when you say, Day does this, she did that.
There's a YouTuber that I watch. I don't know if I should say their channel. We're on YouTube. Should I promote other people?
Promote other
You
people.
can if you want. It's not like it's private information.
I know. So, a YouTuber that I've watched some stuff from, Ash Hardell, they use all the pronouns. That sounds like there's... But, so, they use all the pronouns. And it sounds like my interpretation of that for them is that their gender doesn't match specifically with all of them, or like
Any of them?
or of only one.
Oh.
And so it's validating to hear all of them used as opposed to just one. I mean, I
can see that.
I think that ones that they didn't grow up with are maybe more validating, but hearing them all used in rotation is most validating.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very complex idea, I think. But
Well,
or maybe it's just easy. The variation is creating the sense
That
of
makes
gender,
sense.
and that is like validating. Oh.
I also have a coworker who they introduce themselves sometimes with they them pronouns and sometimes with any pronouns. And I think they use any pronouns, or they say they use any pronouns because a lot of people in their life aren't used to using like binary pronouns for them, and so they're maybe validating the other people who want to use the binary pronouns. So it's they're saying they or any pronouns for the comfortability of people referring to them and not actually their own comfortability, because they, as far as I know, they like most identify with they them pronouns, and those are like what they would really want people to use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's also a valid choice, though, to somewhat late. It's kind of controlling your public identity.
Yeah.
So you feel more comfortable. So I think it's not necessarily that it's not for them. It's just maybe not for their sense of gender, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Just a sense of public comfortability.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's all the information that we keep away from the public.
Oh, yes.
This has been a good talk, guys.
I know,
Yeah.
so good. We have to have you on more often.
I know, this is so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
So our time is up for today, and we want to know, on a scale from cardboard that's fallen out of the recycling box to Sprite Zero, how gay are you?
Also, tell us who has a deeper voice, me or Dagny?
Yeah, it's a real question we don't know how to figure out the answer to. You can find us wherever you found this podcast and on YouTube on our channel, Basically Misled.
If you have any questions you want us to answer on the show or stuff you want us to talk about, email us at basicallymisled@gmail.com or comment below. Thanks for listening, and good luck with your future endeavors.